So I wanted to talk a little bit about shell, gel, propel, and we're going to use the isolated definitions, and we're also going to use the integrated definitions. If that may explain what those each of those are. So isolated definitions will be like definitions for each shell, then gel, then propel, and then integrated will be like how they all three come together for an actual sequence of an real event, and maybe different from isolated, but you know that's going to give some context about the whole thing as a nutshell. How it works. Giving multiple definitions, even if they're synonymous, even if they're two antagonistic of each other, this is actually the sequence of how a lot of things I do work in this day and age. Even with my wiry nonprofit organization, this is how I do the solutions program with the task formula. This is how I do a lot of things, and even my claimations and my channel on YouTube. I don't just go oval is Tony and Cashman tree dot 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 because I don't know how to name my channel. It has a meaning, and it's like and so be it. And this is literally how a lot of my thought processes, abstract philosophies, and you name it. It's gonna be explained this way, and even if it doesn't make sense, I hope it helps somebody out there. So. But that was a bit of a debriefer of a lot of things I do lately. So, it's so seemingly nonsensical. How the hell could it possibly help somebody or even be reasonable? No, you gotta dig deeper. Please trust me. So, shell, what I wrote here was for shell is head inwards. That's the isolated definition. For gel, we have always offer suggestions. For propels, isolated definition, we have encourage positive behavior. And a remark I put below was how to realize emotional context in a flexible way. So that was about a little more, not so much personal, but a little bit more discreet, detailed. Eh. But for Shell's isolated definition, head inwards, yeah, that's the look from within thing. But it's also more like you can actually always retreat in your own mind. You're always safe in your mind, no matter, even if psychologists tell you. There's a bit of a debate both ways or more. And how this works, you're not supposed to always retreat in your mind. You have to at least put effort into your own mind as well, and that's reasonable. But also knowing that you can retreat your mind as a safe space is also the point, because your safe space always is a safe haven, even if it's not. Even if you should put the work in making it better and not making it too much of a scapegoat, you can always improve your mind. You can also always rely on your mind. Like, I mean, not even for everything. Even in a spiritualistic manner, maybe a spiritual manner will tell you that you don't have to use your mind for everything, or if you even could, like including IE addiction, all that stuff. So porn addiction. So that's a rough example, but yeah, heading inwards or shell. So always offer suggestions for gel's isolated definition. You can always offer suggestions into the best of your ability. We'll get to that later for the integrated definitions thing. But to offer suggestions in even heated moments is a bit of a gritty skill. But you have to imagine that even when people don't allow you to give suggestions, you can always give suggestions to yourself. Remember that part. So. And for proposed isolated definition, encourage positive behavior. It just tends to be really good to notice when the negative things are happening and how to dissolve those, if even that's the point. Sometimes people judge what's positive or negative. I know I have. I mix those up a lot personally. But and people who say I'm positive, I'm like, well, I don't know what the difference is between the two, and they're like, well, what do you mean? It's like, you're the one saying I'm positive. Like, how do you not know how I'm not positive? Like, how do you know how to tell the difference for yourself if you think I'm positive? So it's like, I'm not trying to be too philosophical deep for that, because I know that pisses off a lot of people sometimes. I've had a lot of bad run-ins, by the way, about simplicity and complexity, but we'll get to that in other videos. But encouraging positive behavior usually uh, has a bit of a um, you know we tend to think too hard on the negative about things that we have to dissolve and all that. But if we encourage positive behavior, we're able to do that twofold, because in one way we're discouraging negative behavior by default, and by another we're actually giving attention to things that deserve our attention. You know, that could be the easiest thing to say that, but I would rather expand by saying that uh, sometimes we don't even give people tools to problem solve. We should give them tools. We should give them a way, instead of punishing them, we should give them a way to problem solve things. This is why a long time ago in high school I would write things like giving your children money when they make a mistake, because even that's a controversial problem solving technique. Instead of just punishing them outright or grounding them, etc. It's like you have to give people a chance or a method of a means to figure out what the problem was and how to solve that problem. Not just know what the problem is, like, or not even just know that there's something wrong. Like that's how I see it. But so now we're getting into the integrated definitions. So we're gonna explain all this in one go: shell, gel, and propel. For shell, the integrated definition of that would be to um, resist the negative assumptions, the negative pre-assumptions that you would have of something before you get to understand what it really is. You don't let the negativity or the negative conclusions that you might draw sway you away from that person or thing. For gel, you find a way to connect yourself to the outlet or to the focus. And if you connect yourself to a person or thing or a place that may not seem relevant to you, even for problem solving matters, if you connect to them in a way that's unexpected or curious, you might be able to surprise yourself. So find things that are relevant, even out of the irrelevancies. This is how deep I can be. Again, I'll make a video about why complications and ease of uses have bothered me a lot of times, as much as other people, if not more. Either way, for another video. How many processes I'll make for that? Find things that are relevant through the irrelevancies, basically. Like Joel, and that's not simple, but that's my point about the last thing I just said. Like, is that I said something that was totally irrelevant to this video, and I still made sense of it. So, for Propel's integrated solution, instead of encourage positive behavior, what Propel would mean in a whole shell gel Propel routine, program protocol, is Propel would be basically to do something very similar to encourage positive behavior, except for the integrated solution instead of isolated. You would actually be having a non-stop, consistent faith in what you're doing, even if it looks controversial and wrong. You have to have a foundation for what you're doing. If your foundation allows you to scare away people or even scare yourself into not doing anymore, your foundation's not strong enough. I'm simply put. Sometimes in life, people will make it look like you're doing the wrong thing, or that you're doing something that you could be doing differently, or that you're even learning the wrong life lessons, which actually happens to people sometimes. They'll be like, there's a certain moral you're supposed to be learning this point, and you're learning something different, quote unquote. To them that's quote unquote. So that's a quote unquote. They think that you're not learning the right lesson that could be fake, but their idea of what an illusion is not even an illusion. So they're lying to themselves about that. It gets weird. So many brackets, man. But I just But imagine, if you want that to be simple, then imagine that you actually have encouraged positive behavior that was wrong, and you still want to prove something that actually would make sense and be a good thing for the world. People would still see that as being the wrong thing to do, and they'll have to try to stop you to make sure of that. But the thing is, sometimes even the wrong things and the bad things, the things we don't wish would not happen, can lead us to the other right and good things. So even if you were so wrong, the logic of a path that could be right or is right or guaranteed right, it will never lead you to the things that you think would actually make sense, to the things that matter to you. For those matters for the heart, you have to make sure you know what your intuition is telling you. But more than that, you have to just trust your intuition in general. You don't just trust something because it is guaranteed to work. You trust something because it's guaranteed to be good. And that can mean different things for different people. Like, guaranteed good doesn't mean guaranteed right. But just like, people will assume that a logic or a rationality or even a moral compass or a set of warranted emotions, if even quote unquote that, is going to give people what they need or want. But they can make presumptive conclusions either way. I've seen people make really weird conclusions about straw manning and putting words in people's mouths, and it's like, no. And then people will assume they're being nice and that they're being mannerised and they're being diplomatic, but they actually are being worse than the person that they're targeting. It's like, this is my biggest conclusion I've drawn, if even unwarranted, about logical targeting, which was my definition of people who actually focus too much on things rather than giving new ideas and new perspectives a chance. And that could be different from big picture to detail, but who knows. My point is, with shell, jump, propel, this is a insightful method to figure out problems rather than have to solve them right away. It's less about results and more about truth. It's less about understanding and more about living in the experiences that you don't have to understand, Although I would personally prefer to understand the experiences in a nutshell. Take care.